Hello and welcome to Volleyball State, a look at the sport of volleyball in 6 rotations and a proud part of the I-80 Club. My name is Jeff Sheldon.
And I am Lincoln Arneal.
Yes, he is. This week on the show, we get to talk with Dr. Jaime Gordon, the CEO of the American Volleyball Coaches Association, for what became a great, wide-ranging interview on a whole lot of topics. He's very intelligent, very interesting person, so we're excited to talk with him this week. Also, a little bit later on, we're going to peek in on the professional scene with the Pro Volleyball Federation and League One, both Omaha teams involved in action last week. We will get to that in just a little bit. But first, Lincoln, tell the folks where they can find the show in all of the digital spaces.
Yes, we are expanding our digital footprint, but you can follow the Volleyball State podcast on Twitter at Volleyball Pod. We're also on Blue Sky. We have a TikTok account. If you want to go to volleyballstate.com, we've set up a fancy link tree to help you figure out all of the opportunities to interact with the show and with us. If you want to interact with us individually, you can follow me on Twitter at Lincoln_VB. I also write a lot of stories for Huskers Illustrated. We just sent off our magazine, which is all about Danny Busboom Kelly and John Cook. The kind of the transition to that just happened. Big rollout of the magazine there. Also put out Substack, do some YouTube work. We're in the content game.
And you also continue to do some writing about the Supernovas as well.
Yes.
So if you're a big Supernovas fan, you can find all of Lincoln's game recaps, analysis, things like that. I don't know, Lincoln is just all over every sort of branch of the volleyball tree in this state right now.
I've decided I do not want an off season. So yeah, read all my stories on Herdat, where the Supernova stories are, and we'll post some League One stories on the Substack eventually too.
Excellent. Well, hey, big news, right? Let's get to the big news before we talk with Jaime Gordon. Lincoln, you want to kick us off with this?
Yeah. I would give a shout out. You can follow Jeff at by Jeff Sheldon.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Follow me at by Jeff Sheldon on Twitter, and I'm not in all those other places, or at least not publicly.
Yes. So, but yeah, we've kind of been hinting at last couple shows that we've done since we've joined the I-80 Club. I want to kind of give you up to speed what we worked on. We're figuring out what we want to offer you all. So we've been teasing these changes, and I think we've got to a point now where we're ready to unveil what we're going to do to kind of give you more coverage, more opportunities to interact with us and talk to us, and also hear from us as well too. So there's so much interest in volleyball. And you just want. So we put together our nice shiny heads and came up with some great ways to interact with you to get you more content.
Yeah, so many emails and text messages and planning calls have gone into things like this. But, we hope we have it figured out, or at least, we're going to move fast and break stuff just a little bit. Let me start off by saying there is always going to be shows like this one, which are free and available to everyone at the same time. We think that's really important. But for those of you who have gotten in touch with us and want a little bit more Volleyball State, a little bit more volleyball content, like Lincoln says, there's kind of not an off season anymore. And for those of you who just kind of like this community that we're building and you want to support it and you want to make sure that Volleyball State remains a part of your volleyball diet, we think we've come up with some ideas to give you a little bit more bang or maybe a lot more bang for just a couple of extra bucks. So starting very soon, you are going to have the ability to become a Volleyball State subscriber at patreon.com/I80 Club. Again, patreon.com/I80 Club. That will be live very, very soon. And for just $5 a month, here's all the stuff that we're going to give to you. You are going to get extra shows that are only going to be available to subscribers, just pure bonus content that only you who are supporting Volleyball State gets. We're going to start that very soon. We're going to record it in the next couple of days. Lincoln and I are going to each draft our all-time Nebraska team of the John Cook era. So position by position, we're going to draft the best players over Nebraska's last 25 years and argue about which one of us is right, which one of our teams could crush the other one. We're also going to, in that bonus show, look at the most significant matches of John Cook's coaching tenure and make a top 5 list. And I think both of us kind of define that a little bit differently. So we're going to cover plenty of great matches over the last 25 years and talk about what we liked about each of them. Yeah. Next, you are going to get live access to live shows. Starting this fall, we're going to start doing live Volleyball State, where it's going to be on YouTube on Sundays. Once the volleyball weekend has wrapped up in the college season, you're going to be able to join us live you're going to be able to ask questions in the chat and kind of become part of the show in a way that you have not been able to this extent. And those live shows are going to be made available to everyone, but a couple days later. So you're going to get first interactive access to Volleyball State on Sundays. We're also going to be doing some live chats in the I-80 Club Discord. If you're like me and you didn't know what that meant until a couple of weeks ago and it sounds new and scary, it's basically just almost like a live message board or a subreddit where you can talk with us. And we'll do anything from answer your questions about volleyball to answer your questions about life its own self. You know, maybe we're going to be watching a big match together while we do this. Maybe we're just going to be taking your questions and we'll work them into the show. Either way, we're going to be talking directly to you in real time about the sport that we all love together.
Yeah. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Discord too, I first time I got introduced to it, like, oh, this is like Slack for work or something like that. So it's very familiar, very easy to use. And I think with a little bit of exposure we've had to on the I-80 Club already, we've had some good conversations, good questions. So some of our questions that we asked Dr. Jaime Gordon came from that Discord as well too. So for those of you who also still like reading, we're going to take and start a Volleyball State newsletter. We'll kind of fill it with news, analysis, and send right to your inbox. It might be a little less frequent during the off season, but we may do it as much as a weekly during the season too, because there's so much content going on, and we want to make sure that you're up to date on the most recent information. So, and also one opportunity we may have is we may do some post-match analysis right after matches. If you don't want to wait till Sunday or shortly thereafter to figure out what Jeff and I think of the matches, we may do some quick hits, just a couple minutes long initial impressions before I sit down and write my stories or do any analysis, or we sit down to have a day or two to reflect on our normal podcast schedule. So
the takes will be super hot and possibly bad.
Yes, but hey, you'll have them and you'll get to disagree with us and yell at us and they come on the Discord and say how wrong we were. So it's all part of the cycle of the volleyball community. So all of that will be available to subscribers. And right now we're offering that at $5 per month. So go to Patreon/I-80 Club. That's patreon.com/I-80 Club. There's no dash in I-80. It's I-80 Club. So
we'll also be posting these links on the show social media accounts. Like if you want to find it, you will be able to find it. We will make sure that you have the opportunity to find it.
For sure. So, I mean, a lot of exciting things happening. We're glad that you're along this journey. And if you want to stick to your once a month or twice a month or once a week podcast, great. But for those of you who want to dive in deep and live in the volleyball state and be citizens, we're gonna work with you, and we'll provide the content that you so desire. So, yeah, we're excited to be part of I-80 Club and excited for the opportunities ahead. But we're going to start right now. Our guest this week. We're going to talk with the CEO of the American Volleyball Coaches Association, Dr. Jaime Gordon. He's been in the position for just under 2 years. He was previously a volleyball coach at Morehead State. The last few years he was there. He's also pulling double duty and also served as the athletic director, but he's been a great vision. In fact, you heard in our last episode, John Cook mentioned the ideas that come from Dr. Jaime Gordon. He's an ideas man. He comes with a lot of ideas and really continue to push the sport forward. So we have a great conversation with him that's coming up right now.
All right, Dr. Jaime Gordon, the CEO of the American Volleyball Coaches Association, joining us on Volleyball State. Dr. Gordon, thank you so much for being with us. How are you doing today?
I'm good, guys. Appreciate the time to spend with you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being with us. Just real quick, first question. You came on board with the AVCA in July of 2023. And the season right after that, we started to see kind of this explosion in popularity in women's college volleyball, not just attendance, most notably the Volleyball Day in Nebraska match and Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, but then a series of television ratings records being broken and in-person attendance records being broken. What do you see as kind of the next step in continuing to help this sport grow after the last couple of years where we've just seen a huge explosion in the sport's popularity?
Yeah, there's a ton of potential. And I think, Jeff, to your point of this explosion, it's been organic, it's been consistent, and it hasn't happened with a clear catalyst. Okay, so there's no doubt that the 92,003 and by the way, I was with two other people there. So if I hadn't been there, I think it would have been under 92,000 and just wouldn't have been as clean of a number.
Thank you for your
But
service.
yeah, so there's no doubt that was a historic moment. But I think this growth has been building, and then we saw it happen with just attendance records being broken one right after the other. And you sometimes look after that type of season, maybe a bit of a hangover or a dip that comes after it. And we absolutely didn't see that happen in this most recent year. And again, without a catalyst of like a personality. So if you look at what women's basketball experienced last year and the year before with Caitlin Clark and everything, all the attention that she brought, you're seeing the hangover this year. I mean, there's still great momentum in women's basketball, but not to that level. So I think we're seeing it continue. And I think it's because of how good the sport is, how deep the sport is, the parity, the new players that are coming in to it. I think you've got more capable programs of competing for national championships, amazing athletes, great storylines, tremendous coaches. So everything is really there. And I think the next step for us is our revenue viability. How do we make this into a business? There's no doubt that what college athletics is facing is really revenue is as critical as it has ever been at every institution. And I think if you look at what women's volleyball does and what it's kind of maybe that portfolio, that investment portfolio that you didn't put much money into it. And it's just kind of been sitting there and it's slowly growing. And now all of a sudden you see, wow, the returns on this investment has been really significant. Maybe now what happens if I add more into it? Will I get similar returns? Will I get a little bit more? So I think twofold, as that investment comes, we also need to be prepared as a sport to adapt to it and to be ready to be partners in that next step.
The personality-driven aspect of it, I've always found kind of interesting because volleyball is a very different sport than basketball. Basketball has always kind of been dominated by individual personalities and just the nature of the sport. One person can dominate a game by having the ball in their hands all the time, like Caitlin Clark did. Volleyball is very different just by the nature of its sport. Do you think volleyball needs to look at ways to be more personality-driven in order to grow the game, or can the game sort of grow and succeed without that necessarily?
I think it's showing that it can be really strong without it, but I think we're being short-sighted if we don't find ways to bring in those personalities and embrace it, but doing it in a way that is true and unique to volleyball. So we don't need to model ourselves after basketball. Model of, hey, one of the things that's unique about volleyball is that, as you mentioned, Jeff, it's not just one athlete that can take control. So what is that connection? Is it from passer to, is it from the defender to the setter? Is it that setter to the attacker? If you look at the NFL, you might have a Patrick Mahomes, but there's the receivers, on the other side, you need that other personality to be the balance to it. And so does who is the Travis Kelce in that mix for us? And so if it's, Nebraska and you're like, okay, we've got some of these personalities, maybe it's that connection and that team continuity that we need to find ways to highlight.
Sure. One of the things that we've seen the AVCA specifically do to help grow the sport too is last year they introduced the First Serve Showcase. First off, why did you want to bring that back? What gap or opening or opportunity did you see that this was going to fill?
Yeah, and Lincoln, you talk about bringing it back. It was kind of there, up on the shelf, kind of gathering legislative cobwebs, and so we had to work really hard to get that taken off, so that we could take advantage of that particular time in the sports calendar. The NFL hasn't started, college football hasn't started, and there is this just really sweet opportunity to say, hey, let's get the spotlight on volleyball, and let's do it in a very marquee kind of way, and credit the coaches, especially the ones from last year, to be willing in a very short time frame to say, yes, we're on board with this, that John, Cook and Danny and Craig Skinner at Kentucky and Kelly Sheffield at Wisconsin were just like, yeah, we're on board. We don't know what this thing's going to look like, but yeah, we commit to it because we see what this could be.
Yeah. I mean, last year you mentioned it kind of was a very short runway, 1-day event, 2 matches. This year, multi-day event. It'll be happening at PBA, Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln. I mean, what did you learn from that first year, kind of putting everything together that you hope to apply this year to really roll out a bigger event?
Yeah, I think, another part of this, at least the vision of the First Serve, is how do we push the sport? How do we try some different things? Last year's event, we utilized the Bolt 6 system. So we didn't have lines judges. It was, we had electronic line calling. We brought LEDs around the court, which really increased some of the revenue viability around it. I think this year we're going to look at how do we help some of the pace of play. So I think for us this year, and in expanding the format and the number of teams participating, it's again a new way to say, hey, what can this thing be? How do we let it evolve? And I was just talking with one of the participating coaches, and they were saying, this is going to be really cool. There's a whole bunch of teams coming in. Like, we don't have that anywhere else. There's the Final Four, and you've got those 4 teams, but we're going to have 8, 10 teams in this area that are all elite level. And I think it's just going to create a really neat opportunity.
Yeah. And last year was in Louisville. Louisville kind of had the bookend of the season, started the season, end the season there with the Final Four too. I mean, why did you want to come to Lincoln? I mean, you could have done the same thing maybe at Kansas. I don't know what arena availability was, but you could have done Kansas City's hosting the last matches. What about Lincoln excited you about the opportunity you had there?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the Nebraska fan base and the culture of volleyball in the region is unique. And so as I spent time talking with some of the other coaches, but specifically with John, and like, hey, let's do something that hasn't happened, which is play some college volleyball in PBA. Let's do this in a big way. Let's try to have a college game day atmosphere outside of the venue. Let's make this more of a festival event that is similar to a Final Four. And because of the growth of the championship, I don't know that Lincoln is a location that would ever host a championship, at least in its current state. But this is going to be that type of environment. And so I think being able to do that in a community that embraces volleyball in a very unique way, I think creates some real special opportunities for us here.
Exactly. And we can expect some news coming soon from the AVCA about this, right?
Yeah. And I will say, I credit the greater Nebraska media. They have find a way of like getting into our files and stuff like that. There's stuff that's leaked out, but yeah, on Monday, there'll be an announcement. There'll be a press release talking about all the teams that are participating in. There will be ticket information about pre-sales and general public tickets. On Friday, we're going to be having a little announcement of a little kind of +1, a little bonus onto the First Serve that we're excited to bring in an additional regional community into expanding the event. So a lot of things. I had somebody point out on a message board that there was a whole series of pages on a message board of people anticipating or guessing what the matchups were, who would be, why those would be there, and that's what we want. Also, there's the Super Bowl just finished, and there's already discussions about, well, how's Philadelphia going to be? What are the next teams? Who's going to be good next year? What are the offseason stuff? And that's, I think, something that's really happening in our sport right now is the conversations are happening. And look at all the moves and all the great storylines that are happening in the offseason right now in our sport. And so it's an exciting time, and hopefully we can add a little bit to that. But yeah, stay tuned for some of those announcements coming up in just a few days.
We would love to take some credit for that, but really all you got to do is put a microphone or a tape recorder in front of John Cook and then just let him go. And sometimes he talks about things that not everyone knows about yet.
No, that's okay.
I wanted to go back to something you were talking about just a little while ago with sort of elevating the sports commercial opportunities to bring in some more revenue. I was listening to another interview you did recently, and I did not know this, but you had pointed out that the TV audiences over the last couple of years for women's volleyball are 40% female, which in the sports landscape broadcast is actually really high. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that more men tend to watch sports on TV than women. So a 40% female viewership is really high. I mean, what has been the reaction when you've been talking with the sports, either commercial partners or potential commercial partners, when you bring this to their attention? Do they see this as a huge opportunity to use the sport to get their product or service in front of a whole new demo?
Yeah, they absolutely do. And you're spot on, Jeff. That's not a typical percentage of female viewership for other sports. So you're going to be in the, if you're lucky, you're in the low teens in other sports to have a good, female share of viewers. And I think what we're also starting to see is that it's a pretty loyal group. So, anybody that watched the semifinals, the championships, there was obviously great matches and really cool, compelling storylines there. But you had almost 6 hours of broadcast. That's a lot.
Mhm.
But when you also see that it averaged 1.2 million viewers the entire 6 hours without major dips so that's a significant group of people watching for a long period of time and staying committed to it. So it wasn't just, Nebraska fans watching their game or this and that. It was volleyball fans that were watching it. So I think that commitment, the demographic that you talk about, but it's also, I think, what we're starting to see in the investment from broadcast, because 2 years ago, there had never been a college volleyball match on network TV. Then ABC announces that they're going to do the finals. Fox puts on a couple. So we had 2 network matches in the 2023 season. And then last year we had 8. And so that's not accidental. It's those networks are recognizing, geez, we've got this demographic. We want to be able to push that. And, even in the general television landscape, sports are what's supporting right now linear TV. It's live action. Again, we see it with what the Super Bowl. And so when you see increase in viewership in a distribution platform that's in general moving down, it's getting a lot of people's attention.
And it's a sport that really lends itself nicely to television. And it sounds like there are some things that either you're aware of or you're working on maybe improving the viewing experience for volleyball fans on TV. Maybe some potential rule changes. Are there things that are really in the works right now that can make this an even more TV friendly sport?
Yeah, I think, and it's important to recognize when you are a sport, especially something that has some commercial viability to it, you need to constantly evolve. The NFL, there is no sports property that does better than the NFL. Every single year, they're changing their rules. They're constantly looking to tweak and make adjustments. I heard an interview with the commissioner from the NBA, and they're looking at how do they change rules, and they're trying to figure out how do they condense their games into a little bit smaller window. The consumer isn't as patient right now. Their time commitment isn't as high, and so the more you can consolidate without reducing the quality of the product, the better. And so I think the NBA is looking at should they change free throws? So instead of having two free throws, just take one and it's worth 2 points. Or if you get fouled on a 3-point shot, take one and it's worth 3 points, just to consolidate it. So I think for volleyball, what we need to look at doing is how do we shorten the window? And my personal opinion, from the serve contact to the end of the rally is really good. We don't need to mess with that very much. But from the time the ball hits and the whistle blows to that next serve, and the pace of play and what's happening in between points, that's where I think our focus should be. So I think there's importance of looking at a serve clock. I think we need to look at restructuring some of our timeouts. As you become commercially viable, it is really hard to sell commercial units to the sport of volleyball because, Lincoln and Jeff, if you guys are playing against each other and I am going to sell your game to sponsors, I have no guarantee how many timeouts you're going to call.
Mm-hmm.
You could call none. You could call all 4 that are available to you. I can't go to market and sell that. So how do we adjust timeouts so that it helps the financial viability of it? Also, I would suggest that we don't need 90 seconds, to go. Let's, internationally, they're at 30 seconds. So, maybe the right format is have a technical timeout somewhere at maybe 10, another technical timeout at 20, and then any coach timeouts are 30 seconds. So you're moving the pace of play. You're creating the financial viability of the sport, and not impacting, competition. I think we need to allow technology to continue to improve our replay system. CRS is just something that has to be better. If not, we need to look at other ways to remove it. But those are the things that, again, I watch a game and I hear the channel changing.
Yeah.
The longer that it sits there.
Well, to me, replay is absolutely the biggest place that has the opportunity to improve. You've got some replay challenges that take like 4 or 5 minutes, and that's just death. Either whether you're in an arena watching the sport or whether you're at home watching it. And I know Lincoln and I have talked on the show before. If you're trying to speed up pace of play, it's not the volleyball aspects of volleyball that need improvement. It's all of the non-volleyball playing aspects that can be tightened up a little bit. And I know there's expense considerations. Some schools don't want to dump a bunch of money into a Bolt 6 system. That could speed things up considerably, but it just feels like replay is low-hanging fruit on if you can figure that out, so many other problems get solved.
Yeah. And I think as technology increases, yes, there's price that comes down. There's competition that happens in the space. But I would even offer, looking at how other people or other leagues or internationally are dealing with some of the same challenges. Internationally, one of the questions would be, do you only, if you are going to challenge during the rally, do you stop the rally to make the challenge? So that we're not spending time going back to a long rally and, hey, it was a net on the very first swing, and when did that happen? Do you keep it to the terminating point of the rally? I think there's things that you can do structurally with what you allow for it, when you allow for them, and then allow technology to be a lot more effective and efficient with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned how it's an evolving game. I mean, we've seen a lot of just off the court developments of changing volleyball too. I mean, you work for the Volleyball Coaches Association too. I mean, how have you had to work with these coaches to help navigate things like name, image, likeness, and now revenue sharing is coming down? I mean, what do you tell coaches who need guidance how to set up a staff or work with things that are not really on the court, they may not be as fine-tuned on? How do you work with them to educate them on that area of the game?
Yeah, it's a Lincoln, you bring up a great point. It's a brand new skill set for coaches. And so I don't care who it is right now that has worked hard and elevated in our sport and is now at the top of their game. They did that on sharpening a whole series of skills, from managing their staffs to their players to technical, the ability to communicate and all of these things. Well, now managing ultimately a salary cap, name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, and the constant transfer of talent retention. What does that mean? So now all of a sudden you throw in everybody's got to excel, and then without a skill set, without that perspective. You look at somebody like Bill Belichick that's now at North Carolina at football, who's obviously now has all pro perspective, and so now he's going to see how that works out. I think it's an experiment that will be interesting to see. I don't know that that's the right approach necessarily, but I think one of the messages that I've been sharing with our coaches is, while they probably, I think the majority of them have gotten into this sport because they want to impact lives. You know, they care about these young people and being a part of the educational process and being transformational coaches. And now, as our environment gets more and more transactional, it does not necessarily mean that you have to become a transactional coach. You just need to learn to adapt in that environment. And even if you look at professionally, who are the successful, coaches, who's winning championships, those coaches are still pretty transformational leaders within their sports. And so I also think there are some great examples for our top coaches to model in the professional space and say, hey, you don't need to give up who you are and your values and your ethics. You just need a new skill set in order to be equally as successful.
For sure, for sure. And the other thing with revenue sharing too is not only are they going to have to figure out how to manage the team and how to divide that amongst the teams, but they're fighting for a slice of the pie. They're trying to get whatever they can after football, after basketball, soccer, baseball, softball, whatever. Are you helping coaches craft that argument why volleyball deserves whatever slice of the pie again, and how to get a bigger slice of that revenue sharing pie?
Yeah, I think, Lincoln, that is as big of a key part of the growth of our sport, is that revenue and that that revenue viability to it. And so you can't just go and ask for it. You've got to be able to show, hey, here's what we can do. And I think John Cook has definitely done that in Nebraska. It is the one female sport that is net positive revenue in all. And I think maybe, Lincoln, you did an article on this maybe, or a post or something. UConn is so far from being profitable. Yeah. South Carolina basketball, so far from being profitable. Even Oklahoma softball, I think they're $2 million still in the red. And so, we've got the one example of it, and I think we've got others that are closer. So, I want to be able to help, Kelly Sheffield and go, hey, you know what, you're not that far. How do we help you drive value within your fan base? Ticket value. There are things, and that's something that we learned with the first serve, is that, we can have a really good production and have a ticket that has value to it, and that the people who come feel that was worth their investment of time and money. And I think that's part of, as the AVCA, as we try to figure out how do we provide those coaches resources and assistance to find the best way to be more revenue feasible.
We're here with Jaime Gordon, the CEO of the American Volleyball Coaches Association, on Volleyball State. Jaime, in some other sports, we have seen some longtime coaches who have retired in the last couple of years and who have come out and said that kind of the changing landscape around NIL and having to re-recruit your roster every year and everything really sort of solidified their decision that now was the right time to retire, or maybe even hasten that decision in some instances. This past offseason, we've seen a trio of longtime head coaches at volleyball programs step down and retire. Ray Bouchard at Kansas, obviously John Cook at Nebraska, and most recently Mary Wise at Florida. I mean, do you see across the landscape coaches who are getting out of the sport, maybe because of the uncertainty around the finances, or is this just kind of like the natural cycle you've seen of coaches moving on and new coaches coming in to take those opportunities?
Yeah, I think there is some I think there's some truth in the statement that yes, the sport is transforming, and what it's going to take to be successful in this next 5 to 8 year window is going to be different. And so if you're a coach, and we do this all the time, coaches are constantly redefining themselves, adapting, making adjustments. I don't know the answer to this, but I'm kind of curious, is like, all right, so what coaches retired when we went from side out scoring to rally score, because you had to change a lot there.
Terry Pettit.
Yeah. I think there is some truth to the idea that, all right, do I want to invest the next 4 or 5 years into transforming myself as a coach as I navigate this new landscape? And if you're thinking, hey, maybe I've got 2-3 years left, then yeah, I think this does maybe accelerate that decision a little bit. You know, but I think we see all different types of changes in sports and the athletes that we work with and things like that. And so I think still we've got incredible coaches in our game. I think we've got tremendous young talent coming through. So while I hate to lose iconic figures in our sport like John Cook or Ray Bouchard or Mary Wise, I am also incredibly excited that we have, you know, people like Danny Busboom Kelly and Matt Ulmer and Ryan Tice stepping into those roles, because I think all three of those coaches you can see running programs for another 20, 25 years and starting new legacies and new traditions. And so, yes, we always hate to see the people that have impacted our sport in such positive ways leave. But I'm also excited about the youth and the future of our profession.
For sure. Another historic milestone that happened this past December, we had our first female versus female national championship match, which led to the first woman to win an NCAA Division I title. I mean, was that a significant step for the sport? And what is the AVCA doing to kind of lift up more female coaches and put them in position to make this not a historical note? Another woman won a title, no big deal.
Yeah, and you know what, I think honestly, it was not a matter of if, it was just a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have so many amazing female coaches in the game that are coaching at an incredibly elite level. And so, and I think it was fantastic that we had two competing in the championship. I think that we also have a unique situation of having our sport that's kind of led by the women's version of it. You know, it's the popularity, the attention, the number of sports that are sponsored. So we also have, I think, exceptional athletes and competitors that come through the women's game. And I think part of it is making sure that we're showing a really good, feasible path for those athletes, whether they're choosing straight from college to get into coaching, or maybe they go into professional careers. And how do we provide good pathways for those people, and not just because they're women, but because they're incredible coaches. And that's what our sport needs, is we need great leadership in there. And I'm definitely excited about, what we've seen historically, but also where we're seeing the game going moving forward.
For sure. One of those great female coaches, also friend of the program, Creighton coach Kirsten Bernthal Booth. She's president of the AVCA board. And what's the relationship like between the two of you? How do you work together? What does the board do influence your day-to-day life?
Yeah. Well, I kind of joke with our board, and it's funny. Actually, we had I had a board update earlier today. It's an easy board to be on, or an easy president term to serve if I'm not screwing things up too bad. That's when the job as a board member gets bad. I'm very fortunate enough to have inherited both a board and an association in incredible shape from Kathy DeBoer, who had been in this position for 17 years. And I was thinking, Jeff, with your lead in right at the beginning about all this great momentum, and you tied it to like, hey, I started. I thought you were going to give me some credit for the growth that you had. I'm happy to take undeserved credit. I also
didn't realize it was 17 years, but I knew Kathy had run the AVCA for a long time.
Yeah, she absolutely has. But Kirsten is an incredible person. She's a great partner in here with me in this position. I was fortunate enough to have both her and Keegan Cook kind of in those primary leadership roles during the transition from Kathy to my start. The nice thing about our profession and our sport is that the coaches are close. They're pretty, have good relationships, and so when there are issues, people come to me, they come to Kirsten. We bounce and share those concerns and try to figure out, hey, what are some of the best ways to keep the sport moving forward. But I probably lean on her more than she does on me. There's no doubt that that she's done a tremendous job in building that program, not just what it is competitively on the court, but what it means to the community around Omaha and the greater Nebraska area too.
We've talked with Kirsten, and we talk a lot about her on the show. We talked a lot about John Cook, obviously, lately on the show as well. And John was always someone who was kind of a driving force behind making volleyball bigger. And maybe he did that through a Nebraska lens, but, you know, a rising tide in this case, I think, lifts all boats. What did you appreciate about working with John over the last year and a half? Do you have any good John Cook stories just from where you sit within the AVCA?
You know, I will say, you know, when you make this transition, and I spent a long period of time coaching. I've been in the volleyball community for a long time, and you think you know a good amount about the sport, and then you step into this position and you recognize, wow, there's a lot about volleyball that you don't know. And whether it's, hey, here's what the high school landscape is, or here's the international space, and you know, and then, hey, there's people that you know as colleagues, and then there's people that maybe you haven't had that much interaction with, and you've just appreciated them from afar. And I think John was one of those people that I didn't have a very close relationship to prior to this position, but I don't know that there was anybody that has been as good of a partner and an advocate, and somebody that I could lean on and that we could bounce ideas off from as soon as I got in this position. And whether it was the things that he was doing with Nebraska or on the rules committee, or just, hey, here's some ideas that I have, and having a sounding board off of them. He has been great. And I'm going to try to continue to hold him into this as we talk about building programs, you know, having him as a resource for other places in the volleyball community. You know, he's a treasure to have, and I think is full of a lot of important insight and information. And in the same way that somebody like Terry Pettit continued to significantly impact the sport after his coaching time, I'm very hopeful that John will continue to be engaged. And from everything that I've had in conversation since his retirement, I have no doubt to believe that he's going to continue to engage, and hopefully with the AVCA.
So you never looked at your phone, saw John Cook's name pop up, say, "What now?" What?
No, he was
on
pretty good. No, he was pretty good.
Awesome. With AVCA, we've talked a lot just about, especially the women's college game too, but you work with everyone from professional down to high school ranks too. I mean, we've seen also kind of the rise of volleyball with the kind of, now we have 3, potentially 4 professional leagues in the United States, the mainland. What is the ideal environment or setup for a professional league in the United States? And should there be an outside authority to help try to coordinate these interests?
Yeah, you know, I don't know about an outside entity, but it's an interesting thought. So I'll say that's just my gut. I haven't necessarily put any thought into it. But I think what we are also seeing right now is, I mean, there is outside investment and significant investment into the sport of volleyball and into the concept of professional women's volleyball. And whether it's 2 leagues, 3 leagues, 4 leagues, obviously there are people that still believe that there is value and potential growth even in the current landscape. I think that the markets will dictate a lot of this. If there was one thing that I wish we didn't have, is leagues in redundant markets. You know, I wish Omaha didn't have 2 leagues. I wish Atlanta didn't have them, but that's just my personal, you know, kind of feeling. I think we're learning where there are feasible markets that can support professional volleyball. I think there are lessons that are being learned by League One, by PVF, Athletes Unlimited, and whoever else enters the space. There'll be things that are information and incredible value that's learned. I think it's nice that we have 2 pro leagues that are or really 3 pro leagues right now that are approaching it, the sport very differently. You know, Athletes Unlimited is one model, PVF is one model, League One is one model. So it's also a good space that we're learning through successes and failures of each of those leagues.
For sure. I kind of hit on the little lead in this question too. Are you seeing the growth of volleyball? Is it limited to just women's college and the professional ranks? Are you seeing that within the boys game growing, within men's college volleyball? Are you seeing growth as a sport as a whole, or is it segmented with different ranges of growth?
No, there's tremendous growth at the youth side of things in boys volleyball. And I think there's, questions of how do we as a sport establish a structure that can support growth in both genders. Like, we don't want to have a situation where we're competing, where women's and boys are competing and kind of stifling that growth. So even figuring out the calendars so that boys club and boys high school work in unison with girls and not in competition. At the collegiate side, over the last 10 years, there's been tremendous work done. A lot of it, credit First Point Foundation that has done outstanding work to grow collegiate opportunities. The high majority of them have been in the Division III space, but that's still collegiate opportunities. In all honesty, I'm concerned about the Division I opportunities in the new landscape moving forward. I get concerned that athletic departments are going to be eliminating sports, and there's no doubt that men's volleyball would be vulnerable to that. So that's a concern as we look at the growth of our sport. I think we saw great growth on the beach side of things. It's been, going into COVID and coming out of COVID, it's been a little bit, neutral. So again, what happens in the growth there? Do we see a rebound and more teams add? What does this new chapter in collegiate athletics do for beach? I also think, if we say that, like, things like our national team and pro volleyball and Division I, top Division I is the head of the spear. And we want to make sure that's super sharp. We also want the grassroots to be good. And I think one of the areas that we have an opportunity to elevate is the high school game. We see great growth in club, but how do we really elevate high school as well to where it's meaningful and that it matters in athletic departments and things like that? We launched this year a high school player of the year where we had 4 finalists. Brought them into the Final Four, to the All-American banquet, to honor them and identify them. So we're also looking at elevating from our youth levels in a meaningful way too.
One thing I always thought was interesting that John Cook would talk about a lot was advocating for the growth of boys volleyball or men's volleyball at the college level. He said he was always in his athletic director's ear trying to get Nebraska to add a men's team, or if not, the University of Nebraska Lincoln, a school like Nebraska Omaha to maybe add men's volleyball. With the, like you alluded to, the current sort of economic realities, I don't know how feasible that is, but it seems like boys volleyball participation is growing quite a bit. And I don't know if that comes at, the expense of a different sport, but, usually if you see popularity growing at the grassroots level like that, it will eventually bubble up to a college or professional opportunity.
Yeah. And I think we also, on the men's side, need to leverage some of the popularity that we're having on the women's side as well. And so I credit the Big Ten Network. They have a agreement with the MPSF, which is the men's league, and that's where USC and UCLA are, that's their conference home. And they're doing 3 linear broadcasts with that league. They're putting a lot of their other inventory on BTN Plus. And that's because they're like, okay, volleyball is doing well here. Let's check out the men's side of things. Like, how's that doing? And so we're going to get some more opportunities there. I think the men's game, at least at the collegiate level, I think we also need to look at how the consumption of that sport on TV is. Currently the game itself values high risk, high reward for serving. But I don't know, when you have, 44 missed serves in a 3-set match,
Yeah.
how you're going to hold on to viewers.
Yeah.
So I think there's some things that on the men's side we can look to evolve the game a little bit if that TV consumption is going to be a priority.
Yeah, I think I saw someone just had 24 aces in a Division III match somewhere recently. So yeah, that's a very serve heavy game, and I don't think that's the most appealing part of watching volleyball is serving.
No, I think it's the great thing about the men's game. It is so impressive when it's good. Like when it is good, it is great. Like watching the Olympics. I mean, the skill level, the power, the rallies, everything like that. Like at its highest level, it's outstanding. It's how does it present itself? Maybe sometimes when it's not. And to your point, aces are not super exciting. So how do we have more of the consumption in between these tremendous moments of great net play and a big dig and transition balls that are tight, and all of these things that are so dynamic and so impressive about the game? How do we get more of them, and how do we minimize the time between them?
We were talking a few minutes ago about kind of a central authority or an outside authority in volleyball. And in the US, that's got to be USA Volleyball. What's sort of the working relationship like between the AVCA and USA Volleyball? And are there more opportunities for collaboration there just for the overall growth of the sport?
Yeah, I think, with the new leadership there, John Spera is really looking at the role of USA Volleyball and the collaborations and the partnerships, I think in a very different way than it has been in the last 8 years. I'm excited to work with John on different initiatives to support what he's doing as the head of our national governing body. There's a lot of work to be done there, and there's a lot of heavy lifting, and it's very, I think, simple and complex, or in concept. It's simple in concept of going, oh yeah, if you're the head of USA Volleyball, just do A, B, and C. But it's tremendously complicated in the execution of it. And I think people like John, or Karch moving over to the men's side, or Eric Sullivan moving over to the women's side, like they need the support from everybody, and maybe a little bit less criticism and more of a, hey, what can we do to help those efforts that you're taking on? Because I will say that it is a big job, and anything that I can do in my position from the AVCA to assist in that. But I'm incredibly excited about having John's leadership there at USA Volleyball, and I really think not just leading into LA, but everything that moving forward, that there'll be some good foundational work done there.
Yeah. Well, we will show our sign of solidarity and not making a UCLA joke when you talk about USA Volleyball. That'll be our sign of support.
Well, hey, I'm not a Bruin, so I may be the one person in that space, or in volleyball leadership in the U.S. right now that doesn't have a tie to the.
To be fair, Lincoln cut me off before I could make a UCLA joke.
Well, one of the things that you were talking about how the game evolving, rule changes. We saw some key rule changes this last year too. They now allow double contacts. The world did not end. They continue to play. I thought it was more enjoyable because they didn't have to worry about. They gave a lot more flow to the game. One thing that I've seen people complain about too, fans a lot, is they've also reduced the amount of calls on throws, jams, whatever you want to call it. Sure. Is that? Do you see that as an area that needs to be addressed, or coaches adapted to that being called? Where does that kind of rule discussion go?
Yeah, I think so let me go back to first on the doubles. I was a huge supporter of eliminating the double contact. And again, I'm going to look at it from a lens of how do we get more people watching volleyball fans, the consumption side of it. But I'm also incredibly intrigued to see what happens in the next 5 years with that skill, because I have a daughter that's a setter. As a coach who trained setters, having the freedom to allow somebody to be more aggressive and experimental, and to say, hey, I'm not even thinking whether I'm going to take this with my platform. I'm going for it. I'm going to force the middle a little bit more. I'm going to do some more things. I'm going to allow my athleticism to be showcased here. I'm very excited to see what happens to the evolution of that position with really talented coaches and trainers. When I look at the throws and the jams and the two hands and this and that, I may not be a fan, but I'm not necessarily, I don't have an opinion yet on what it's doing to the general viewer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've heard some coaches that just want to get rid of the tip overall. Mm-hmm. I think the tip has good drama to it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that happens from a tip is a pancake and that stretch out moment. And if it's something that allows for a rally to continue and drama to build through a rally, if it doesn't stop with a whistle, the fewer times we have the rally end because of a continuation, like a whistle, the rally was continuing, but we stop it because of a whistle. If we can limit those, I think we're better off as a sport. I'm kind of still waiting. I know the volleyball fans and the purists hate it. I'm still waiting to see how it develops a little bit more from that general sports fan. I have a super strong opinion. 30-second timeouts are way more important to me than
I don't even know how you would legislate it out a tip. I never even thought of that.
Yeah. I've heard some people talk like, oh, well, just have them pokey. I was like, come on, let's let it go. Yeah.
Trying to get rid of those judgment calls. So everyone likes those tips or jams when their team does it. When the other team does it, now that's a throw. That's a throw.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, I'd be remiss if we got the CEO of AVCA. My two gripes with AVCA: one, they release the rankings every week, the same time the Big Ten releases their players of the week. So we need to coordinate time better.
Right.
All the volleyball news happens within 1 10-minute period, 2:00 Central Time on Mondays.
All right, fair. Hey, I think I can do something about that. All right,
let's call up, whatever student intern at the Big Ten that puts together the players of the week and ask them to move it up an hour.
Yeah.
And my other one was the AVCA All-Americans. We like just the positional disparity. We had we're finally honoring liberos, but there's only 2 being honored the first team. Nobody on the other 2 teams, and then we have 1 middle blocker. I like to see real teams on the All-Americans, have all the positions recognized, because every team has an outside hitter that puts up 3-4 kills, hits 270, whatever. I think the different skill set that each position brings needs to be recognized. Those are my 2 gripes with the AVCA. Is they're doing a great job. There's where areas I see opportunities for growth.
If those are the 2 gripes, I will take that all day, every year. Like that's no problem. And And this is also good. I like the fact that there is discussion about what the makeup of the All-American team is. Those types of debates and things are healthy. And I think it's one of those. I go into the room with the All-American committee before they start their deliberations, and the only thing that I appreciate what they do, I ask them to keep the conversations that they have within the room and to respect confidentiality of their fellow committee members. And then I ask them to identify the best players in the country, and it's that committee to really then take all of that and decide. And I think there are probably times that, I don't know, maybe you could have another position and being represented on the first team. But then maybe there was just, you get a year where you just got some of the most amazing outside hitters. And are we going to take somebody that's really one of the top 14 players in the country off of that so that we have representation? So I think it's a fair criticism, but I'll take it. So
it's not. I voted the last couple of years in volleyball mags All-American things. It's not an easy thing to do. So I tried to put myself in their shoes and delineate. Do I want to put the 8th outside hitter? Do I want a 2nd, 3rd middle blocker? And
well, and the one thing I will say, Lincoln, and whether it is our poll or our awards that we give out, it really matters. And I have shared, like, we made some changes to our poll to try to improve the integrity of it with the structure. As our sport gets more attention and growth, things like polls, things like All-Americans and awards and all of those things really matter. We tried to enhance and improve our player of the year with putting out a watch list and then adding to it and then getting down to semifinalists and finally 4 finalists. We hope to really build on that a little bit more and love the dialogue of like, how did they leave so-and-so off of this semifinal? Like, that's what the sport needs, but it can't be because we're foolish about it either, or not responsible enough in how we present those.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I mean, just generating more conversation where people are talking about it. And if they're upset, that means they care. And that's a good thing to have too. So we'll leave it at that. So we've been talking with AVCA CEO, Dr. Jaime Gordon. We appreciate your time and your insights. It was a pleasure to have you on and be able to chat with you for a while.
No, I enjoy it, guys. And I really appreciate what you all are doing to just provide more focus and narrative and attention to the sport, and really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks again to Dr. Jaime Gordon, obviously a very intelligent person and has a lot of ideas about where the sport should and can go. So excited to see kind of what the next couple of years of college volleyball looks like under his leadership. Moving on now, we do not have a traditional 6 rotation show for you today. I guess this would be rotation 2 or potentially rotation 3.
We'll make it 3. We'll make our announcement rotation 1.
There we go. So in the spirit of that, I guess they're all 6-2 rotations today. We're going to launch into pro volleyball the week that was, starting with League One volleyball. The Love Classic just finished up in Kansas City. And every time I watch this league, Lincoln, I'm reminded at just like the level of play is so good. I wish it was a little bit more readily available on television. I wish a few more people got to go see it. But they're really doing some experimental things with like events like the Love Classic, where they took all 6 teams and brought them together down at the Municipal Auditorium in downtown Kansas City this week. Love Houston emerged as the winning team in this tournament, beat Atlanta in 4 in the championship match. This was a super tight match. 3 of the sets were deuce games. Houston had a really balanced offense in this one. And I think you're really starting to see, Houston has some firepower on their team, maybe a little bit more than the rest of the league. They had 5 players who had at least 10 kills. They got 16 from Jordan Thompson, who many of you might remember as a breakout star of Team USA a couple of years ago. She was named the MVP of the weekend. Amber Ajide, their middle blocker, who had a great college career at Hawaii, also had 13 kills. So did Jess Merzick, who's having a great start to her professional career after leading Penn State to the national title. She had 13 kills. And so Houston knocked off what had been a red-hot Atlanta team.
Oh, yeah.
Atlanta had come into this tournament, Lincoln, winning 7 straight. They've got Kelsey Robinson-Cook on their team. They were led by Danielle Catino, who had 19 kills. Kelsey Robinson-Cook, not putting the ball away a ton this weekend, 9 kills on 44 swings in the championship match. But anytime you can roll out, a Jordan Thompson who really put it to Omaha as well in the semifinal, I think, that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you said, as we get more used to leagues, get to watch a little bit more of these matches too, you learn more. And I think, the one thing that you appreciate how professional volleyball is different than the collegiate game too is the emphasis on the opposites too. Jordan Thompson was phenomenal as well too. And just kind of Danielle Catino is also playing opposite as well too. So that really, it's an opposite league too. And you look at who Omaha's best players are, most terminal players, a lot of the time it's whoever's playing opposite for them too. So it's been fun to watch. And it's also kind of a nice tie-in that you had the Triple Crown, one of the biggest club tournaments in the entire country, also going on right next door in the convention center too. So Houston is on fire. Jordan Thompson was just playing out of her mind as well too. You saw in the championship match too, and then also in the semifinal on Friday night, or was it Saturday? It was Saturday night.
Did I have the date wrong? Yeah, because
they went 3 for 3. That was the most impressive part too. Is they won 3 matches in 3 days. And also beat Omaha, a fresh Omaha team on Saturday in the semifinals. Jordan Thompson had 25 kills and hit .438 too. So she is playing like the superstar that the USA Volleyball needs her to be.
If you haven't seen a ton of international volleyball or professional leagues, usually your outside hitters are more ball control players, like a Jordan Larson or Kelsey Robinson-Cook, who are good passers, good defenders, because you have fewer subs You don't get to bring in DSs for your outside hitters, so they have to be good all around players. And then it's your opposite, your right side, that is kind of the offensive firepower. And Jordan Thompson, who I think had a match at Cincinnati where she had like 50 kills.
Oh yeah,
she
had more
was
than
like the player. And if she had come along a couple years later with the transfer portal and NIL, like people would just be rolling wheelbarrows full of cash up to her door to get them to transfer to, one of the higher profile colleges. But she had a great college career. She was on Team USA. She might be, the leading candidate to be the starting USA opposite at the World Championships or the Volleyball Nations League later this summer. Killed Omaha on Saturday with 25 kills and hit 438. Omaha's challenge right now, this past weekend, they didn't have players who could really be that terminal, especially the outside hitter spot. So Jordan Larson had 10 kills in that match against Houston, but hit just 167. Jaylee Winters, the former Creighton star who had started the last few matches for Omaha, hit 0. Maddie Kubik Banks had 5 kills on 26 swings, which is less than 200 kill percentage. And so Omaha needs really their outsides to start putting some balls away. I think they've got a really good player at opposite Nicole Drenjak, the German national. She had 16 kills in that loss to Houston on Saturday and hit 400. But I think Kirsten Berthal Booth was down there in Kansas City, and the TV broadcast interviewed her, and she said something I thought was really insightful, which is, the defense is so good at the pro level. Everyone's playing out of system like all the time. Very rarely are you just going to go pass, set, kill and be in system all the time. So you need to be able to score out of system. And Omaha was just not putting balls away to the level that Houston was out of system. So Omaha goes 0-2 on the weekend. They also lost the third place match on Sunday, 3-1 to Austin. Omaha actually made a change at outside hitter where Vicky Savard, who plays on the Canadian national team, got her chance to be outside. She had a team high 13 kills. Drenjak again had 12, but Omaha, they're not in dire straits by any means, but like they need someone on the left to be able to step up and score. And I'm wondering too, Lincoln, Omaha is one of several teams in League One that's playing a 6-2.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they decide to look at that and make a change there and just pick one between Gabby Blossom or Laura Jikma. Neither of those are super tall players. They're going to be blocking liabilities. So maybe they really have no choice but to stick with the 6-2. But, that's one thing that you could do and just try to let someone get in a rhythm.
Well, yeah, that too. I mean, not only the setter getting a rhythm too, but I mean, you're taking Nicole Drenjak, who's one of their best terminal hitters, off the court too. And I mean, Lauren Stivrins has been playing a lot, and then even it was on the semifinal match on Saturday. It was Audra Fitzmaurice. She got the start in her hometown. I mean, former Stanford Cardinal, but she was grew up in Overland Park too. So it's just inconsistency of lineups too. I mean, everyone's being shuffled in and out. I mean, you mentioned Winters has kind of given way a little bit more to Maddie Kubik Banks. So it's just a lot of uncertainty in Omaha's lineup. I mean, they have very talented players too, but if you're changing so often, is anybody really getting in a rhythm? And I think that you saw that too. I mean, they've gone to that Vicky Savard. She started when Omaha played back-to-back matches as well too. So Omaha, I mean, they're still 4-2. They were the second seed for that tournament too. They got about another month and a half left in the season, 2 months left of the season. So they're not in dire straits, but you like to see some of the answers. Some of the matches they've lost have not been good.
Yeah. You just real quick look at the records in League One. Houston got hot last weekend. They won the tournament, but Atlanta still has the best record in the league. They're 6-1. That's the team that Kelsey Robinson Cook is on. Omaha is 4-2. So is Houston. Salt Lake is 3-5. The big news kind of in League One volleyball this week, Austin, who is 2-4 on the season after last weekend, their head coach, Marco Bonita, is stepping down. That just came out on Tuesday, I believe, for personal reasons. I think, Lincoln, he had already committed to coaching overseas next year. So he was going to be kind of one and done anyway. Former BYU men's coach Chris McGowan is going to take over Austin for the rest of the season. So we've already seen some coaching transition. And then Madison is bringing up the rear there. League One Madison is just 1-6 on the season.
Yeah, and we should note too that the League One, the Love Classic matches do not count towards the season standings. It's kind of a separate tournament overlaid in the middle of the regular season too. So
I wondered about that on the Love website, which, you know, I have a couple of issues with. I don't know that I trust all of the statistics that I see on there, as they just don't make sense to me. But that would explain why the records weren't updated.
Yeah, why Atlanta still only has one loss. So yeah, this is just kind of like when you think of like it's very common in soccer, or even like what the NBA started to do with their cup. It's a separate competition, so it's a good exposure. They got the championship match was on ESPN2, so a little bit good exposure for the league as well there too.
Excellent. The Pro Volleyball Federation, man, like, break up the Omaha Supernovas. They are red hot. They've won 5 of their last 6 matches, and as of this recording, I have this right, Lincoln, the Supernovas are the first place team.
They're now tied for first. I think they weren't first for a short bit on Monday. But now they're tied for first with Vegas at 7-3. Yes. Okay.
And last week, the Supernovas went on the road and won a couple of matches.
Yeah, they've won 5 last 6. The one loss they did suffer was the first ever sweep in the 2 years of the Supernovas. The first time they got swept, they were swept by Orlando, but they won on the road, won against Indy and Atlanta, who kind of in that middle tier of teams too. And then on Sunday afternoon, they dominated San Diego. It was tight. It really wasn't a very competitive match too.
No, Omaha jumped that match.
Yeah, Omaha jumped out each set, and it really was not that close. And San Diego kind of had they didn't come to the press conference. I could tell they had a team meeting on the court right after the final point too. There's some things going on there. They're not happy with the way they've been playing. They'll get another shot against Omaha in San Diego on Thursday night as well too. So Omaha seemed to have things figured out, and things are going well for them.
Taiba Heneve Park is the head coach of San Diego, I believe, and she was just announced within the last couple of weeks as also being a new assistant coach on Eric Sullivan's Team USA staff. That's, you know, she's going to be based on the West Coast, so that's convenient for her, but they've got some work to do in San Diego to figure some things out. They're down near the bottom of the PBF standings. They're at 3-7. Like you said, Omaha and Vegas are 7-3. Orlando just a half game back at 7-4. You want to talk a little bit about the All-Star match? That's going to be the big story of the week in Pro Volleyball Federation. I just saw today, friend of the show, Emily Eamon's going to be on the broadcast for that.
Yeah, in her native state of Indianapolis. Well, it's going to be Fishers, Indiana, not Indianapolis, which is just on the outside. So, yeah, first ever. They didn't do this last year, so they've announced a couple of replacements. I think there's 26 now players that have been named All-Stars. One of those is injured, so they got to add a couple replacements. But it kind of first exciting match too. That would be coached by Dave Shondell, Purdue head coach, and then Michelle Collier from Georgia Tech will be leading the two teams. And they're not divided up east-west. They're just, I don't know if they had a draft or how they decided on the teams, but there's some teammates going against teammates. Omaha will be represented by 3 players: Brooke Nuneviller, outside hitter, middle blocker Caitlin Horde, and then their libero Camila Gomez will be the 3 Supernovas represented. I think they had the second most. I think Vegas had 4 and Orlando had 4, if I recall correctly. Yeah. It should be a fun match. It'll be on CBS Sports Network. Should be it's on CBS broadcast television, not the cable network. So it's a good opportunity to showcase the sport of volleyball, like we talked about with Jaime Gordon earlier. Here's another opportunity for get it into a lot of people's homes across the country.
Well, and Lincoln, you're at all the Supernovas home matches. You know, Brooke Nuneviller is obviously the leader on this team, or at least on the court. I was wondering when we were going to see Emily Londot get a chance at opposite, and we've seen that over the last couple matches. This is a player that seemed like she took about 70% of Ohio State's swings for the last couple years, and it's cool to see her kind of get her professional volleyball career off to such a good start. What's Emily Londot look like?
Yeah, she started the last 3 matches for him. She's played kind of sparingly here and there, come in a late match substitution, but really started the last 3 matches. And I don't know, maybe coincidentally, but Omaha's won those 3 matches too. I think she's replacing Kelsey Payne, and they're just different types of players too. I think Kelsey Payne's a little bit more finesse, a little more skill, where Londot is a little more power, a little more physical presence at the net, which when you're playing opposite, you're going up against the other team's best hitters at outside hitter. So I think that's a big boost for Omaha, and that the block. I mean, they really did work against San Diego with their block, and she had 3 of them in the third set. So, and just again, she has the same Emily Londot that we've seen at Ohio State the last few years. Really powerful hitter. I mean, and we talked to her after that match on Sunday, and she said even when she makes mistakes, she's going to come back and swing away again too. So you need to have that mentality when you're playing professionally, because your people across the net are also very good, and we'll get you every now and then too. And you got to be creative to hit shots around them, and you'll miss every now and then.
One thing I was always impressed by Londot in college, and I think this translates well to the professional levels. Yeah, she hits with a lot of power, but she also finds the edges of blocks. Mm-hmm. She finds fingertips all the time. And it was just so frustrating if you were playing against her in college that you'd think you'd have a block set up really well, but she'd tool you, or she would catch your fingertips or get a micro touch. And, you're not just going to like hit through or over a professional block. You got to be able to score off the edges. And she knows how to do that.
For sure. Yeah. So, we're about halfway through the season already. I mean, they'll each play 24 different or 28 matches. So they'll play each other team 4 times. So we're not even halfway through the season too, but their matches are coming fast and frequently and for the PVF. So that's rotation 4. Well, let's move on to rotation 5. We have one big, we kind of mentioned this during the interview too, but the other big coaching news, we knew that Mary Wise stepped down, but they hired former Marquette coach Ryan Tice to take over the program as well there too.
And this is at Florida, and yes. This was sort of all eyes in college volleyball were on who was going to get this position. It was open for I think about 2 weeks while Florida interviewed some candidates, and Florida had a really strong internal candidate that definitely had the support of all the players in Dave Boos, who at least as of this recording is still an assistant coach on the Florida staff. Ryan Tice has had a lot of success at Marquette. They were kind of the number 2 program in the Big East the last few years behind Creighton. And it's not like he's a total unknown in Gainesville. He has Florida ties. He was an assistant there under Mary Weiss a few years ago. He's also married to a former great Florida outside hitter named Jenny Mans. So, it's a little bit of a homecoming for Ryan Tice as well. I imagine his first priority is going to be making sure no one jumps in the transfer portal, quite frankly, building some relationships with some of those great players at Florida to try to keep the ship intact, because Florida's going to have a ton of talent going into the 2025 season if they can keep it all in Gainesville.
Yeah, we kind of I dubbed them as one of the winners of the transfer portal too, because not only did Kenny Martin and Alexa Stuckey not go in the portal too, but they got Fulmaria Hernandez
Fulmaria Heredia Colon, I believe, from Miami.
Yeah, she one of the better few All-Americans that transferred that landed at Florida as well too. So they got a lot of firepower, and we'll see what he can do. I mean, he made the postseason 10 of his 11 years. I think the only exception was a COVID year, which you can't hold that against him. It's a weird year, and advanced to 3 different regional semifinals as well too. So he got a little bit.
Florida's like Texas in that if they can just pass a little bit, they've got the firepower to beat anyone. Yeah. So if Ryan Tice can develop some ball control and all of those pin hitters stay, and Alexa Stuckey is a really good setter, then like they should be ready to rock and roll this fall. But hey, players have 30 days to enter the transfer portal, and we still got a little bit of leash left on that. So probably during our next show, we'll be able to come back and know for sure if Florida's roster is going to stay intact.
For sure. Let's close it up. We'll go rotation 6. We found our 6 rotations. Nebraska's beach season kicks off on Friday. They're going down to the Orlando area. They'll play 3 different matches at Stetson. They'll kick off on Friday. They'll play Stephen F. Austin. In the past, sometimes these matches have been streamed. We'll see. I don't know the availability of being able to watch these, who knows, but we'll get the results. We'll see how they do. Nebraska, again, they use their beach season primarily to cross train. I know they do have several players who have beach experience too. Skylar Pierce turned out to be a really good beach player last year. So I would say enjoy it, watch it. Don't invest too much in the results, because usually with Nebraska, especially if Nebraska's playing another Division I opponent, the other teams have people who train on the beach year round. And so Nebraska, even though for all the skills that they have and the All-Americans they trot out there, they're not beach players. It is a different game. So
yeah, they'll go like 500, and don't read anything into that about how like the indoor team will be in 2025.
Yeah, they'll be fine. So they open this weekend in Orlando. They'll play 2 weekends and the wonderful indoor facility at Hawks, the beach in Lincoln, Nebraska, and then they'll go out to their traditional week and a half they will spend out in Hawaii and California over spring break. So beach season is here. It does not feel like it. It is, what is it right now? It is 4 degrees outside.
4 degrees in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, wonderful time. So,
and then we're getting nothing official yet, but like Jaime Gordon said, like the source of John Cook is already out there talking about what spring in Nebraska could look like for an indoor exhibition match.
Yeah, I think he kind of hinted at this during his retirement press conference too, when he told the story about the old man from Ord who wanted Danny Busman Kelly be the next head coach. But he had an interview with Tom Chattel this week in the World Herald and said basically that he wants to come back for the spring match in Ord because he kind of helped let that up. So yeah, so went on official announcement on when that will be. But people may be lining up outside of Ord's high school right now to secure one of those very precious tickets.
Lincoln, is there, and maybe you know the answer to this, are you limited to only playing one date in the spring? You're shaking your head no.
Nebraska chooses to. I think you can play up to 4.
Because some schools play like a tournament in the spring or multiple tournaments in the spring. I say this because I have heard some rumblings about potentially playing another spring exhibition match a little bit closer to home, maybe playing one in Lincoln around, late April, around whatever they're going to do with what was formerly known as the spring football game. Nothing official on that, but I would not be shocked if there was 2 different spring dates for the Huskers this spring.
Yeah, I think Nebraska is kind of the anomaly. I mean, they get a lot of competition in because they're also one of the few programs that uses their indoor players to play beach. So they didn't feel a huge need to get a lot of game competition. But with the spring football game going away and the kind of a festival going on, it makes sense for volleyball to jump on that and kind of build off of the excitement of that day. If they're not going to be a football game, hey, let's play some volleyball. Let's pack in 9,000 people or whatever into Devaney Center or find some place to play and provide another opportunity to get a competition against an indoor team.
I don't think we've mentioned this on the show yet. At least we didn't talk about it when we had John Cook on, but they're going to add more seats to Devaney. Like, I didn't think that they necessarily could, but they want to get capacity up over 10,000 there.
Well, Troy Dannon said that, and kind of we're talking about. I think the goal is for that to happen in 2026. Okay. I think what they're going to do is move the walls up higher, the standing room only, maybe make them shorter. I don't know if how that'll affect the banners, whatever. But they're going to add another 1,500 seats to that to get it close to 10,000 people. Because again, like we talked about earlier in the interview, the bottom line is you got to make money. And there's a waiting list that had, what was it? I think Troy Dannon said this, like there were a dozen or so. I mean, there was fewer than 50 people who moved off of the season ticket waiting list too. So there's the demand is there, and people want to watch Nebraska volleyball. So this is
I applied for. I don't get press passes to a lot of matches, and my family likes to go when we can. So we applied for season tickets through the faculty staff process at Nebraska, and they didn't exactly laugh in the email response to me, but like you could sort of feel some thinly veiled humor, and it's like, no, you're not getting tickets.
Hope you live to 80, you can eventually get in.
Yeah, exactly. It's like football back in the 90s. But hey, that's why you have us to talk about all the things that you might have missed if you weren't able to attend a match in Devaney in person. So, hey, that's our show for today. Please subscribe and review to Volleyball State. Even if you're not going to become a paying subscriber, we'd love to get a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to this show. You can also subscribe on Google Podcasts. If you want to see video versions of this show, where we dress up real nice and put on our best faces, you can find that on the I-80 Club page on YouTube. And remember, coming very soon, you're going to have the chance to become a monthly supporter of Volleyball State. I'm trying to kick around like a name for what our subscribers will be, because subscribers mean a lot of different things in the podcast space. There are subscribers that are free. There are subscribers that pay some money. But for right now, we're just calling you a Volleyball State subscriber. Just $5 a month is going to get you access to live shows, a bunch of bonus content, e-newsletter, and it just supports the work that we do and the time that we put into this, so that we are encouraged to continue doing it. And you can do that at patreon.com/I80club.
Yeah, if you have ideas for what you want to call our fan group, send us an email at volleyballstate@gmail.com. Or if you're an I80 club member, drop it into the Volleyball State channel on Discord. So a lot of different ways to interact with us. Follow us on Twitter at volleyballpod. Blue Sky, we're there too. He's Jeff. I'm Lincoln. Thank you for listening. We'll check in with you very soon, and keep on living in the Volleyball State.